1,109 new cases in the first 20 days in April. That's a lot. And especially considering that our borders are supposed to be closed. So where all of these cases coming in from? And they're doing contact tracing. Don't they have the data on where all of these cases are coming? Is there at least a theory on it? Then on top of the positive cases going up, there's the fact that there are a lot of deaths happening now. From the 10th to the 20th, there have been 12 deaths. That's significant. And it makes sense because I've heard also that the ICU rates are spiking. And then combine that with the fact that in the last 10 days, there were 12 deaths. That's significant. That's not a small number. That's something that should raise a bit of concern, and I guess it has, because we were back under some more significant restrictions than we were. And I think that may need a whole other video. But I'm speaking here more about the population and the people, how we react to this, how it seems like we react to this. The God is a Trini mentality seems to be even in this COVID reaction also. Many people might speak like they're worried about it, but by their actions, you see that they aren't too bothered by it. And I think that has a lot to do with the normalcy bias. Normalcy bias, I think, is very interesting, especially when you're considering human behavior and how we tend to interact with the world around us and how we tend to interact with each other. There's a lot of normalcy bias. Normalcy bias is that I am accustomed with things going a certain way. I said in my contemplation that when most people die, it's their first time dying. And some people are wondering about most people. Well, it was a joke. And also, there are some people who have been reported to technically have died and then come back. But then it's according to your definition of death. If your definition of death is the permanent end of life, well, you don't come back after the permanent end of life. So, well, unless you're Jesus. So, where was I? Hey, I'm Nathan. If you like the video, leave a like, drop a like there, drop a comment. I like to say comment when you reach the end, so it's more of a challenge to see who is actually reaching the end and what you get from it. I like to hear what you get from it, to see what you think about it also. They say great minds discuss ideas. Well, let's discuss ideas. Let's see. And subscribe to see when new videos are coming out. I'm trying to release them as soon as time permits, and time permits now, I guess. When you're accustomed to your entire life running like a movie and you're the star, you don't die during your life, you live during your life. It sounds strange, but it is what you do. And when you die, it's the end of your story. So as long as your story goes on, as much as you know, you're going to survive whatever comes. And that is where the normalcy bias catches us. The Mount Vesuvius, that was ancient times around Pompeii. It's a volcano that erupted and killed basically the entire city, buried them alive. But the volcano didn't just erupt and suddenly catch them off guard. They stood for hours and looked at the volcano while it was erupting. The Titanic, closer up to us in history, when it first hit the iceberg, a lot of people thought, well, that just happened and it's going to all solve itself. The thing with normalcy bias that's so strange, it doesn't really need a logical reasoning behind it. When you ask people that are thinking with their normalcy bias how something is going to be solved, they may not even have an answer. It's just going to work itself out. And that really does sound like the Trini typical mentality. It's just going to work itself out. But some things don't. And sometimes you do die. And sometimes disasters do happen. The world, what is normal changes. What you think may be normal, where your life runs and it's so calm and nothing affects it, may not be the same in the next day. What is normal now isn't what was normal last year already. So the normalcy bias that we have works against us. It's not about thinking positive and remaining with a positive attitude and a positive outlook. A positive attitude and outlook is great. You want a positive attitude and outlook because that allows you to move forward. That allows you to have hope for the future. I guess that's what gives someone the reason to go on. A positive outlook is important. Fine, good. I understand that. But the difference between that and a normalcy bias is that a normalcy bias is a bias. It's not about logic. It's not about thinking it through. It's about you just knowing that this is going to work out. It's a Pan Am flight in 1977. A lady literally had to be dragged out of the flight by her husband. And her husband could have only done it because he had been in a fire before, so he knew the urgency of getting out as quick as possible. The lady said she watched her friend sitting in the flight with her arms folded, just sitting in the seat there. By the way, most of them died. The flight crashed before it even took off. It was on the ground. They could have run out. But normalcy bias says, whatever, this is going to fix itself. Normalcy bias is 9/11 when the planes hit the towers, which just so happens to be 20 years ago this year. If you're someone like me that was aware of it when it happened, 20 years seems like a long time to have passed between then and now, but my how time flies, whether you're having fun or not. During 9/11, when the planes hit the towers, they found out that some people weren't evacuated on time because they stopped to turn off their computers to save their work. You know, it's just another evacuation. I can have time to save my work and turn off my computer, but it was not. And I don't know the severity of this COVID situation, and I'm not trying to fearmonger and say this is going to be the end of the world necessarily. But even in situations where the consequences may not even be as drastic as a massive disaster that kills hundreds of people, it makes sense to check on your own normalcy bias. It makes sense to always check on all of your biases, because biases taint your view of the world. You don't view the world through a realistic lens when you're biased. You don't see what is actually there. You have a filter over your view on the world, and that's what a bias does to you. So check on your normalcy bias. The numbers of cases are rising. Whether you think it's some big hoax or not, the numbers are rising. And I don't think you want to find out whether the hard way or not, how real it may or may not have been. And the unique thing about this is that there's a communal effect going on. That, like with many other things, when one person's bad, I don't know if to use the word bad, but one person's risky behavior can affect everyone else. And I think it's in your best interest to want the best effect for our country, not so. You want to know that your actions during this time actually work to the benefit of our country. At least I'd like to know that, because when my country benefits, I benefit too. At least that's the hope. When I think about the guy that climbed the volcano in St. Vincent, I think about normalcy bias also, because I don't think that that man necessarily wanted to die. I think that he had his other reasonings, of course, but he obviously didn't think that the volcano was going to erupt, and it didn't, which is good. I'm glad that the guy didn't die, but the chances are that it could have. And the bias of these things would work out is what allows us to sometimes take those unnecessarily risky chances. And should that volcano have exploded, he would have died. And the consequences of that would not have been left with him only. It would have been left with a lot of other people, and it would have made the entire situation worse for many people who do not need much added to their grief right now. The reaction people have to disasters really tells greatly about how they view life on a whole. And I think the biases we view life with really has a huge determining factor on how life results for us. And our normalcy bias may be hitting us right now. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.